Welcome to One Wrong Move, where one small decision set the whole chain in motion. Today's story starts with a little water getting into the wrong tank and ends somewhere nobody saw coming. Just after midnight, the 3rd of December, 1984, a city of nearly 1 million people is asleep. On the edge of that city sits a pesticide plant. Inside it, a tank of a chemical dangerous enough to need layers of protection around it. And a small amount of water has just found its way into that tank. That is the whole trigger. A bit of water in the wrong place in the dark. By morning, Bhopal will be a name people use when they mean industrial catastrophe. And the reason a little water did all of that is the part that breaks your brain. The place is Bhopal, in central India. The plant belonged to Union Carbide India Limited, an Indian subsidiary majority owned by the American company Union Carbide. It made pesticide, useful, ordinary stuff, sold as a way to protect crops and feed people. But to make that pesticide, the plant had to make and store something far more dangerous in between. A chemical called methyl isocyanate. Everyone there just called it Mike. You need to understand 3 things about MIC, because all 3 matter tonight. 1. It is poisonous at low concentrations. Enough exposure can burn your eyes and lungs or kill you. 2. It reacts violently with water. Put the 2 together and you get heat and pressure and more gas. 3. It is heavier than air, so if it gets loose it doesn't drift up and away. It sinks. It hugs the ground. It rolls through streets and low doorways into the houses of sleeping people. Poison, reacts with water, heavier than air. Hold those 3. The MIC was kept in big tanks, partly buried in the ground. One of them was tank number 610. Remember that tank. Union Carbide's own rules said a tank like that should never be more than about half full. The empty space on top was filled with nitrogen gas, held under pressure. That nitrogen did 2 jobs. It kept air and moisture out, and it pushed the MIC along the pipes when crews needed to move it. By late 1984, Tank 610 held about 42 tons of MIC. That was well over the safe limit. The tank was too full. And weeks before the disaster, it had lost its nitrogen pressure. Without that pressure, the crews could not pump the MIC out, so the overfull tank just sat there, stuck. Poison, sitting warm and over the limit, trapped in a tank the crew couldn't empty. That's where we start. Now, a plant like this is not supposed to rely on nothing going wrong. It is built with layers of protection. If one fails, the next one catches it. For the MIC tanks, there were 4 of those layers. 4 separate safety systems. Keep count of them, because they are the heart of this story. The first layer was refrigeration. A cooling unit was supposed to keep the MIC cold, near the temperature of a fridge. Cold MIC is sleepy Mike. Keep it cold and any reaction is slow. You get warning. You get time. Here is the first gut punch. The refrigeration had been switched off months earlier, on purpose. The plant was losing money. It was running far below capacity. Running the cooling cost money. So they shut it down to save money. The MIC was now sitting at the temperature of the warm Indian air. Not the cold the manual demanded. Warm chemical. Ready to react fast, to save the cost of keeping it cold. That is 1 layer down, before the night even begins. The second layer was a thing called a scrubber. If gas ever escaped the tank, it would pass through the scrubber, which would wash it with a chemical and neutralize it. That night, the scrubber was on standby, and it was built for small, routine leaks. Not for a tank venting tons of gas at once. It was undersized for the thing it was about to face. 2 layers down. Keep the count in your head. 4 guards and each one is about to fail in a different way. If you want the full chain, not the cheap version, subscribe. The third layer was a flare tower, a tall stack that burns escaping gas off in the air before it can spread. The flare tower was out of service. A piece of pipe connecting it had been taken out for maintenance. And even working, it was too small to burn off a release this big. 3 layers down. The fourth layer was a water spray, a curtain of water you could throw up to knock a gas cloud down out of the air. Hold that one. We will come back to exactly how far it reached. And there was one more problem under all of it. The gauges that measured the tanks were known to be unreliable. The crew had learned not to trust them. So when the numbers started to move that night, the first instinct was that the numbers were wrong again. And the crew running the MIC unit had been cut back. Fewer people, less training, watching the most dangerous part of the plant. So here is the plant on the night of the 2nd of December. Tank 610 is too full, warm, stuck, and watched through gauges nobody trusts. Now add the water. That evening, workers were washing out some pipes connected to the MIC system, a routine cleaning job. Water from that washing is believed to have traveled through the pipework and into tank 610. The exact path is still argued over, but the result is not. Water got into the tank. And remember the second thing about Mick. Water makes it heat up, pressurize, and turn on itself. Inside the tank, in the dark, the reaction begins. It does not stay small. It feeds on itself. The reaction makes heat. The heat speeds up the reaction, which makes more heat. And the MIC was already warm, because the refrigeration was off, so there was nothing slowing it down. The temperature inside the tank climbs past 200 degrees. The pressure shoots up. The metal starts to groan. This is what engineers call a runaway reaction. Once it starts, it does not stop. It only builds. The crew start to notice. Eyes stinging. A pressure gauge climbing fast. By the time they're sure it's real, it's already too late to stop it. The pressure forces a relief valve open, and the gas starts to vent out of the top of the stack, into the night. Stop here. This is the moment the whole story turns on. A tank of poison is venting over a sleeping city. This is exactly the disaster the plant was built to prevent. It had 4 safeguards to stop it. So look at where those 4 safeguards are right now. The refrigeration that would have kept the chemical calm. Switched off months ago to save money. The scrubber that should have washed the gas clean. On standby, and too small for this. The flare tower that should have burned the gas before it spread, disconnected, and too small anyway. And the water spray, the last chance to knock the cloud down. The crew turned it on. The water rose about 10 meters into the air. The gas was venting from roughly 30 meters up. The water reached about 1/3 of the way. It never touched the cloud. The last guard fell short, into empty air. 4 layers of protection, off. Undersized, out of service. Or too low to reach. All 4. At the same time. On the one night they were needed. That is the turn. The water was the spark. The missing safeguards were the story. It is that every single guard that could have caught the release had already been taken out of the fight. A little water. Met a plant where every guard failed differently. And there is one more thing missing that night. A warning. There was a siren that could have told the city to wake up, cover their faces, and run. In the critical window, there was no working public alarm to warn the people outside the fence. So the gas came for a city that had no idea it was coming. No siren, no instructions, nothing. It was a cool, still winter night. Almost no wind. The worst possible weather for this. The heavy gas had nothing to scatter it. So it did what Mike does. It sank, and it spread low across the ground. Over about 2 hours, roughly 30 to 40 tons of gas rolled off the plant and into the streets. straight into the crowded neighborhoods that had grown up right against the plant's fence. People woke up unable to breathe, in the dark, coughing, half blind, with no idea what was happening to them. One survivor, Aziza Sultan, described each breath as if she was breathing in fire. Her eyes were burning. Whole families ran into the night, not knowing that running through the cloud only pulled more of it in. The streets filled with people, and with those who did not make it out of them, the hospitals had no idea what they were treating. By the time the sun came up, Bhopal had changed what industrial disaster meant. And here we have to be careful because the number of dead is one of the most fought-over figures in the world. So let me give it to you in honest layers and tell you who counts each one. The official immediate death toll was somewhere around 2,200 to 3,800. That higher end comes from the state government's own compensation records. Independent reviews put the dead in just the first week at around 8,000. And the long-term totals, counting the years of illness that followed, are commonly put at 15 to 20,000. Survivor groups say the true figure is more than 25,000. Whichever end you take, more than 500,000 people were exposed to the gas that night. Indian government figures later recorded over 500,000 injuries. Blind eyes, ruined lungs, conditions that followed people for the rest of their lives. 500,000 lives, marked in a single night by Tank 610 and safety layers already failing. So who did this? In the years after, the company offered an answer of its own. Sabotage. It argued that a disgruntled worker had deliberately put the water into the tank. Indian investigators and the courts rejected that theory. The evidence pointed at the plant, not a saboteur. And the company's own chairman, Warren Anderson, had said in 1985 that there was no evidence whatsoever that sabotage was behind it. This was not solved by pointing at one bad man. It was water meeting a system stripped of the guards meant to stop it. What came after is almost as hard to take as the night itself. In 1989, the company settled all claims with the Indian government. The figure was about $470 million, for a disaster counted in thousands of deaths. Spread across the victims, many individual payouts came to only a few $100s each. That kind of payout, for injuries that often lasted a lifetime. Critics called it about 5 years of medical costs for harm that did not end. If you want disaster stories told through the systems that failed, subscribe. Bhopal should not fade into one phrase. It deserves the whole chain. It took until 2010, 26 years later, for an Indian court to convict anyone. 7 former Indian officials of the company were found guilty of negligence. Each was given 2 years. 2 years for a death toll counted in the thousands. Warren Anderson, the chairman at the time, was charged in India but never stood trial there. He died in 2014. And the plant itself was never fully cleaned up. Decades later, the groundwater around the site is still contaminated. The disaster never really ended. Step back and look at the whole chain. It started with too much mic trapped inside Tank 610. It ran through a cooling system switched off to save money, leaving that chemical warm. Through a scrubber on standby, a flare tower in pieces, and a water spray that climbed only part way up. Through gauges nobody trusted, and a siren that never warned the city. And then, a little water, into the one tank that could not take it. Any one of those guards doing its job, and you likely never hear the name Bhopal. Cold Mick reacts slowly. A working scrubber washes the gas. A working flare burns it. A taller spray knocks it down. But every guard failed at once, and a tiny mistake had nothing left to stop it. That is the one wrong move, not the water by itself. The empty space where 4 safety systems should have been. And the line that stays with you. A whole city went to sleep trusting that someone, somewhere, had left the guards on, and one by one, no one had. A tank nobody could empty. 4 safeguards that failed in 4 different ways. A little water in the dark. If this one got you, hit subscribe. One wrong move drops a new one twice a week, and the next one is worse.